Hello! We all know how good Jiaoqiu is for Acheron, but I wanted to go over some other teams where he excels in, and whether or not he'll be a good option for our new 5-star character, Feixiao. I've done some math and testing, so one of the things we'll go over is how he stacks up against the two titans of Honkai support rail, Robin and Ruan. So I personally think Jiaoqiu is very universal and not just tied to one archetype, and of course this is thanks to his vulnerability, which can amplify every damage type in the game. If you're not aware of how vulnerability works, it's an additional multiplier that's factored in after you've calculated base damage, and what this means is each point of vulnerability will or almost will be an exact 1-for-1 increase in actual damage. Just to give you an example, these are the damage numbers for an Argenti 180 cost alt. Base value only has buffs from Tingyun. Then I've compared it against his damage when adding E0 S1 Ruan, Robin, and Jiaoqiu. You might see this is an exact 174% damage increase with Jiaoqiu, and that would be right. From his own kit, Jiaoqiu provides 50% vulnerability, 15% of which is for alts, and 24% from his signature light cone. So just by having Jiaoqiu in the party, you can amplify your Argenti's ult damage by 74%. Now keep in mind this is only a single instance of damage, not factoring in any of the other benefits, which I will get into later. These numbers are mostly here just to give you a general idea of how strong each of their buffs are. But just from damage amplification alone, you can see Jiaoqiu is an incredible option for Argenti, especially with Argenti doing upwards of 70 to 80% of his damage or more from his ult. Similarly, Yunli is very ult heavy and has about the same damage profile as Argenti, and you can see her Intuit call also gets amplified by 174%. You'll see that as far as raw output goes, this falls slightly short of Robin, but it's still very close. Now for the actual teams, you'd ideally run Tingyun alongside Jiaoqiu, so you got the double Foxian duo. Try to put your Argenti and especially Yunli in slots 2 and 3. This will give them the best chance of getting cleaved, which means more energy and more counters. HOYO is generally the best sustain. You can go for Lynx if you need more aggro for Yunli, but overall this isn't as important of an option as the other supports, so you can pretty much go with whoever you have that's available. Next up is Feixiao, and from the 2.5 livestream, we can see she's a very alt-oriented character similar to Acheron, Yunli, and Argenti, and what I mean by this is a majority of their damage comes from their alts. Since we don't have the official numbers just yet, the way I went about doing this is by looking at how much each ability did percentage-wise. Is it the most reliable method? Maybe not, but it should still give us a good idea for her damage distribution. You can see the percentage changes the most from the ult, and not very much from the basic, the skill, or the follow-up attack. With this in mind, we can definitely say that Jiaoqiu will be very good for her, as she can benefit from his full kit in a similar way to Yunli and Argenti. I'll be using Wen Dan Heng as a placeholder for Feixiao. Since she has her own unique energy mechanic, Tingyun will not work, and we'd rather run teammates that support the follow-up archetype, so that can be Topaz, March, or even the new Moze. If you do run him, you'll be able to play the full Yaoqing squad, which is kinda cool. Venturine for the sustain if you have him, otherwise no one else really stands out, so you're free to run pretty much anyone else. We'll keep it simple for now. Jiaoqiu will be a good support for Feixiao, no doubt, solely based on the fact that he'll amplify her damage by a ton. The 3 characters we discussed so far are very alt focused, but that doesn't restrict him from working well elsewhere. The 15% additional alt vulnerability isn't critical to his success, and it's better to look at it as a bonus rather than a limitation. So let's take a look at a character with a more balanced damage profile. I know some people love to meme on him, but Blade is still a capable character. If we're talking about hypercarry, Bronya is a must run with Blade. Sustain will most of the time be a healer. Lucha and HOYO are best, with Lynx being decent occasionally. Fushuan can also be a good pick as well. But after that, you'll want a secondary amplifier. Since Blade primarily scales off of HP, we can ignore Robin here. Ruan normally fulfills the slot thanks to how universal her buffs are, but we can see that Jiaoqiu actually comes out ahead in a full rotation. It's not by a crazy amount, but it's definitely not negligible either. There is one important thing to note here though, and it's that this is at E0 S1. If we compare Ruan and Jiaoqiu at E0 S0, Blade loses 24% damage with Jiaoqiu going from S1 to S0, which makes sense given how vulnerability works. It's a little unfortunate, and I don't want to say Jiaoqiu is Sig reliant, but he definitely has one of the more powerful ones. His performance without it is still respectable, especially considering Blade's ult is not doing the majority of his overall damage. But now we kind of have an idea of how Jiaoqiu's buffs interact with a couple different playstyles, and we can see he's pretty universal. Overall, Jiaoqiu, Robin, and Ruan of course excel in their own niches, but they are relative to each other in terms of raw amp, which is a good thing. Neither of them are blowing the others out of the water, and for the most part they're pretty interchangeable as well, meaning you can just slot in the one that's best for a certain team, which is important since we need 2 teams to clear endgame. Jiaoqiu has basically 100% uptime on all his buffs, which is a major quality of life benefit. You're basically amplifying your entire team's damage by 59 or 74% at all times. And for teams that care about debuff application like Acheron, he's simply just best in class, as well as being a Ting Yun for her. And I know this isn't a Robin or Ruan video, but I do need to point out their strengths for you to see their value when compared with Jiaoqiu's. Robin definitely provides the strongest raw buffs by a slight margin most of the time, with some downtime. Of course, when you're playing her, you'll want to time your most damaging attacks for when Concerto is active, and also gaining a lot of value from her own additional damage. Ruan is unmatched in break teams, no explanation needed thanks to her weakness break efficiency, while still being competitive to the other 2 as team-wide buffers. Usually you won't have her ult active at all times, but again, it's similar to Robin where you want to save big attacks for when it's active. But all that being said, I think there is one thing that does stand out with Jiaoqiu and might go a bit underappreciated. Again, not saying he's better than either of them as they all excel in their own niches, but he has 100% uptime. Simple as that. There are 2 more teams where I believe he's fairly competitive in and can add value to. The first is Hyper Carry Dr. Ratio. I recommend running Jiaoqiu alongside Ting Yun for him, and this is a really accessible team for a lot of players since we got a free ratio, which did unfortunately end in 2.2. Jiaoqiu works here not only as an amplifier, but also enabler, since Dr. Ratio needs multiple debuffs to be able to actually launch his follow-up attack. One common trend you might have noticed with these teams is the occurrence of Ting Yun. What if you don't have her or you need her for your other team? I know how it feels because I don't have her on my EU account, but you can actually run Hanya or even Asta if you want to be a bit spicy. Her basic attack can technically apply a burn, which can come in clutch once in a while, but maybe that's pushing it. Topaz for now will always be the best partner for Dr. Ratio. Robin, of course. Ruan even. Silverwolf is great, especially with all the debuffs she applies. Pella, if she's available, can also be a substitute. You got a lot of options. Lastly, we have the Dot Team. His universal vulnerability does amplify the team's damage by quite a bit, and Kafka can detonate his burns, which is kinda neat. Overall though, from my own testing, I found there were no differences really in terms of performance running him, Ruan or Robin, which again is a really good thing, but Dot Teams really need a dedicated support. The point I want to make though with this is that Jiaoqiu's performance is relative to those of Robin and Ruan. It's really just a testament to his strength. Even if they're better in some or most situations, the fact that a Nihility debuffer can hold his own against the Harmonies is pretty impressive. Yes, he is by far the best Acheron support, but there's a lot more to him outside of that, and I'm sure there will be more characters in the future that will use a similar mechanic to Crimson not stacking. But these are just my thoughts, and I know there are a lot of you out there who want to pull Jiaoqiu but don't have Acheron or don't plan on getting her. Don't worry, he's not only tied to her, and he's plenty strong as a standalone character. But that's pretty much everything. If you found any of this helpful, I'd appreciate a lot if you left a like and sub. Jiaoqiu of course works with a lot of different characters, but that's outside the scope of this video. Just wanted to point out some of the more notable ones. If you have any questions about using him with other characters, let me know in the comments, but thank you so much for watching, good luck if you're pulling, and I will see you next time. 光と再会す空にあるあらゆる美しさは僕が守り抜きます。すべてをイドリラ様に。